I've been working the same job for 6 years and haven't missed a single day. Not one. When my boss told me to take 2 weeks off before I burn out completely, I didn't argue. I'd already been a dick to all my coworkers the last month. I packed my bag that night, threw it in the back seat, and left before sunrise. I hadn't taken a real vacation since college. The plan was simple: drive a few states over, visit my parents, clear my head, and remind myself that life existed outside fluorescent lights and inbox notifications. The first few hours were exactly what I'd hoped for. The sky was a washed-out gray that softened everything. The world smelled like wet grass. I drank gas station coffee that tasted like cardboard and listened to Static Fleck classic rock until I didn't think about work at all. By late afternoon, the highways had narrowed into two-lane backroads that weaved through farmland and patches of pine. My GPS lost service sometime after noon, but it didn't bother me. I had directions printed out, a full tank, and no schedule. Then I passed the green sign. It was weathered, half swallowed by kudzu, and I almost missed it. The white paint was peeling, but I could still make out the letters that read out the county name. After that, the road curved through the trees for what felt like forever. The canopy grew so thick that sunlight came through in slanted strips, each one pulsing as the car moved beneath it. I rolled the windows down to clear the smell of the engine and felt the air shift. Warm, heavy, still. When the woods finally opened up, I saw it. A small town sat in the valley ahead, quiet and neat as a painting. The houses were all white with green shutters, the lawns perfectly trimmed. A church steeple rose above everything, and a narrow main street led straight to a diner with a silver roof that caught the last of the daylight. At the edge of town stood a sign. The paint was fresh, the wood new. It didn't list a name or population. It only said, "Welcome home." I slowed the car, smiling at how odd it was to find a place this quaint without a single GPS marker. Maybe it was one of those old forgotten stops that used to sit along the main roads before interstates were built. A few people were out, an old man sweeping a porch, a woman watering flowers. They all turned to look as I passed, and though I couldn't see their faces clearly, I could tell they were smiling. The diner was the only place that looked open. A faded neon sign buzzed weakly in the window. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, so I parked out front and went in. A bell jingled above the door, and the smell of coffee and frying oil hit me. The place looked spotless. Linoleum floors, booths with red leather cushions, framed photographs of old cars and parades. A woman behind the counter smiled before I could say a word. "Afternoon, sugar. Sit wherever you like." Her name tag said EDNA. She looked to be in her 50s, hair curled and pinned, makeup perfect in that old-fashioned way that made her seem almost ageless. I ordered a cheeseburger, fries, and a black coffee. She didn't write anything down, just said, "Coming right up, sweetheart," and vanished through the kitchen doors. I sat by the window and watched the town through the glass. The street was nearly empty, but I could feel eyes on me. People glancing from doorways or windows, quickly looking away. It wasn't threatening exactly, more like curiosity. When Edna came back, she set the plate in front of me. "You're not from around here, are you?" "Just passing through," I said, taking a bite. The burger was perfect, juicy, crisp on the edges, cooked exactly how I liked it. "This is great, by the way." She smiled almost shyly. We aimed to please. "Is there a road that leads back to the interstate?" I asked. My GPS kind of died on me. "Sure thing. Just take the road you came in on, sweetheart. It'll take you anywhere you need to go." Her tone was casual, but something about the phrasing made my stomach tighten. I thanked her, paid, and left a few extra bills on the counter. She gave me a small wave through the window as I backed out of the parking lot. The sun was low, orange light stretching the shadows across the road as I headed out the same way I'd come. The air cooled, the woods thickened again, and for a while, I drove without seeing a single car or sign. Then I came around a bend and saw the same "Welcome Home" sign again. At first, I thought I'd made a wrong turn, but I hadn't taken any turns. I'd gone straight the entire time. The diner was there, the church, the houses, everything. I checked the clock. I'd been driving for almost 20 minutes. I wasn't sure what unsettled me more, that I was somehow back where I started, or that the sun hadn't moved an inch. Phoenix. People get lost. Country roads fold in on themselves. It happens. I swung into a small gas station with an analog pump and a dusty, open sign crooked in the window. Inside, a radio played low from the back, fiddle, static, then a voice that flickered out mid-syllable. A man behind the counter looked up. Tall, leathered skin, hair slicked back like motor oil. The tag on his shirt said Hank. "Back so soon?" he asked, smiling like we were old friends. I tried to match the smile. "Long road. Think I looped." "Ain't but one road, friend." He tapped the counter with a fingernail. "Same one you came in on." Edna said that. My mouth felt dry. "You got a map?" He ducked beneath the counter and set a laminated county map between us. It showed the state roads like arteries, but the town itself was faint. A pale smudge, no street names, just a thin line curling in and out like a fishing hook. "You sell gas?" I asked, though I could see the pump. "Course. Settle up when you're done." I took the map and a bottle of water to justify standing there longer than necessary. The air inside was heavy, like a wet towel thrown over your face. When I stepped back out, I noticed something I should have seen earlier. No cars in anyone's driveways. Not one. The first time you get spooked on the road, it feels stupid. You argue with yourself. You list reasons you're fine. Then you start talking out loud just to hear a human voice, and it's your own. "Okay," I said, uncapping the water. "We're not doing this. We're going to leave." I drove. I counted curves, culverts, telephone poles. Every time the trees parted and a sliver of sky bled through, I said it out loud. There's the gap. There's the dip. There's the stump with the hornet nest. I even tore a page from my directions and let it go out the window like a breadcrumb. 15 minutes. The forest thinned. My body gave up a breath I didn't know it was holding. Then the pavement straightened and the diner's roof flashed like a coin flipping in the sun. Welcome home stood fresh as wet paint. The paper I'd tossed was gone. Edna stood outside with a rag in her hands. She waved with the same exact motion as before, like I'd hit rewind. "Back already, sugar?" I didn't answer. I kept rolling past her, slow, as if my life was a glass of water I couldn't spill. At the opposite edge of town, I eased to a stop where the blacktop narrowed. I could hear my heartbeat through the steering wheel. If the only road circled, maybe there was another route that wasn't a road. A maintenance path, a driveway that turned into something. A field, even. There's always some farmer's gate that opens to a way out. I spent the next half hour trying every branch. Cul-de-sacs that looked copied and pasted. Gravel spurs that ended in white fences so clean they reflected light. One turn spat me back on a main street from the wrong direction, like the town had a tongue and I'd stepped on it. When the needle on the gas gauge shrugged below half, my stomach pinched. I pulled into the diner and sat in the parked car, hands on the wheel, the engine ticking as it cooled. Edna watched me through the window with a look I'd only ever seen on nurses. Polite, alert, already filled with the answer you were about to ask. "You all right, sugar? You look a little lost." I think I took a wrong turn. "Every road leads back here." She nodded, gaze sliding past me for a breath, like she'd checked something over my shoulder. "Some roads go where you don't mean to. I need a map. Or the sheriff." "The sheriff's across from the church," she said, already stepping back, the smile smoothing into a neutral she wore like lipstick. "He'll set you straight." The sheriff's office looked like a waiting room that had pretended to be a police station for so long someone finally gave it a badge. Old photos lined the walls. Fairs, fishing contests, black and white parades with men in hats. The faces smiled the same way. Mouths a little too wide, eyes a little too soft. A big man emerged from the back, uniform tan, mustache groomed to a dull point. "Afternoon," he said. "Heard you were looking for some direction." I explained the loop. He listened patiently, nodding at the right times. When I finished, he smiled in a way that made the muscles in my neck pull tight. "These roads will do that," he said. "You follow the main one till it splits by the old barn. A few miles up, take the left fork. You'll be on the highway in no time." "There's no barn," I said. He chuckled. "You will see it now you know to look." The way he said it lodged under my ribs. But I took it like medicine and left. At the door, I glanced back. He was still smiling, still watching. I drove until dusk bruised the edges of the trees. The light turned weak and then went flat. I kept expecting an old barn to peel out of the woods. It didn't. The road curled like it had been poured, not paved. When I broke from the last stand of pine, the sign glowed in my headlights. "Welcome home." I stopped in the middle of the road. The letters looked sharper than before, the stroke of each painted curve a little too neat, like whoever had written it had been practicing. From the church, a bell rang. It was less a sound than a pressure that moved through the air. I don't remember parking. I remember the church doors open, a light that didn't look like electricity, and a smell like old wax warmed by someone else's body heat. The painting at the front showed Jesus with his arms spread, but the eyes were wrong. The mouth was stretched into a smile that said, "I know you, and I am not who you think I am." I left without looking back and found a motel one block over. The clerk behind the desk looked up with a ready grin that didn't need my name. "You're the new guest," he said. "We don't get many new faces these days." "How much?" I asked. "Settle up when you leave." He slid a key toward me. "Let's talk." Room 7. The key had a notch in it like a bite mark. The TV in my room bled static. When I adjusted the antenna, the picture sharpened to more static, and under it I could swear I heard a voice hunched down low in the white noise. Not words. Not yet. I slept with my shoes on. I woke stiff and salt-tongued from grinding my teeth. Sunlight hacked at the curtains, and the town outside looked bleached, like it had sat too long in a shop window. 2 kids biked by. I waved without thinking, and their hands lifted in unison, palms out. The dirt on their jeans was in the exact same place it had been on the kids in the sheriff's photos. When they rode by again 15 seconds later from the other direction, the dirt hadn't moved. I went back to the diner. I wasn't hungry. I went because I didn't know where else to put my body. Morning sugar. Edna poured coffee without asking. It smelled like burn and comfort. "You find your way. Do you remember me?" I asked. "Yesterday," she said. Before that, her eyes flickered. Not the lids, but the color, like the brown, shifted to a deeper taproot. "Why would you want to leave?" It sounded wrong coming out of her mouth, like someone was holding the edges of her voice and tugging. I didn't drink the coffee. When I stepped outside, the bell over the door jangled twice, even though it only opened once. My car door squealed the same pitch it always does. Those little noises are what convince you you're still in your life. I turned the radio on because I was an idiot. Static. Under it, a thready murmur angled just right so it could slide under your skin without catching. I twisted the dial. Country, preacher, weather. At each stop, the same undertow shaped itself to the syllables. Jesse. No one had called me that out loud since college. It was always just, "Hey you." Hearing my full name felt like someone put a hand on the back of my neck. I shut the radio off. The sound bled from the speakers anyway, mapped itself onto the engine, the tires, the tiny whir of air moving through the vents. It wasn't in the car. It was in the place, vibrating whatever had enough surface to carry it. A smart person would have left the car, thrown the keys, walked into the woods. A smarter person would have gone back to the sheriff and put their hands flat on the glass until someone said the truth. I drove. I drove too fast and made the kind of micro adjustments you only make when you're about to crash. When the sign rose again, the letters looked like they'd been scored into the wood with a blade and then painted over. The edge of the M had a burr. A figure stood to the right of it. The sheriff tipped an invisible hat. Even from a distance, his eyes looked like 2 polished coins. He raised one arm and pointed back toward town. I looked in my rear view and saw the diner lights on like a stage set. In the doorway, Edna lifted the rag and squeezed like she was wringing it out even though it was dry. I stopped trying to leave. The days turned into a stack of panes of glass. You could see through them, see the last one, and the next one, and the one after, but you were always stuck touching the surface of this one. Each pass, the town leaned a fraction closer to the version of me that belonged here. People started using my name. I didn't give it to them. Edna said it first by accident, then corrected herself, then pretended she hadn't corrected herself. The sheriff said it like he'd been elected to say it. Hank imprinted it on his smile. The motel clerk slid me a pamphlet after my third night. "Welcome packet," he said, puffing his chest like he was proud to have found something useful. The paper was off-white, the kind that tries to be nice and ends up looking like it was dipped in tea. The font was a courier knockoff. Inside was a one-page procedure outline held together with a single rusty staple that had bled a circle into the paper. I unfolded it on the bed, and the pages fought the creases like they'd been folded for a long time. Operational notes for new arrivals. Rule 1. When you hear the bell, pause what you're doing and stand still until it stops. Rule 2. If you find yourself lost, continue forward. Do not turn around. Rule 3. Always wave back. It's polite. Rule 4. Sleep only at the motel. If you must rest elsewhere, keep one shoe on. Rule 5. Do not look at your reflection for longer than 3 seconds. They read like jokes until they didn't. Rule 3 made me angry. The way arbitrary office rules make you angry. Some petty assertion of control dressed up as courtesy. Rule 4 sounded like an old wives' tale. Rule 1 felt like a dare. At the bottom, a line in smaller type. Ask the dispatcher for clearance before attempting the barn road. Who the hell was the dispatcher? I flipped the page. Stapled to the back was a faded page from an incident report. Something copied poorly, lines warped. Someone had underlined a sentence with a dull pencil. Subject repeated Rule 2 until lips bled. Turn anyway. I pulled the staple out with my thumbnail, and it let go too easily, like it had been waiting. The staple left a crescent of red on my finger that I licked without thinking, and the taste, metal, old, and sharp, took me out of myself for a second. I took the pamphlet to Hank because he looked like a man who knew what a dispatcher was. He squinted at the pages and chuckled. "Procedures keep us safe," he said. "Safe from what?" "Confusion," he said. "Confusion is a kind of weather." "You got a dispatcher?" He tapped his ear. "Everybody does." I wanted to say fuck your riddles, but I didn't. I bought jerky and a pack of matches just to see if he'd sell them to me. He did. The receipt printed blank. I made my own rules. You do, when the ones you're handed make you feel like a bug lined up to be pinned. Rule A. Speak first. Ask a question that has nothing to do with anything. See where their eyes go. Rule B. Count seconds out loud while looking at glass. Stop at 3. See if it twitches when you do. Rule C. Leave something of mine where I'm not supposed to be. See who moves it. I left a post-it on the inside of the church door, so tiny it felt like a sin. Yellow square. I wrote you were here and drew an arrow to nothing. When I came back an hour later, the note was gone. When I came back that evening, the note was on the podium like it had been placed for a sermon. Edna's wrist had a bruise that hadn't been there the first day. A shadow ring. She noticed me noticing and turned the coffee pot so the handle faced me like that was relevant. You ever been to the barn? I asked. Sugar, why on earth would you want to go there? Because the sheriff said that's how to leave. She laughed, this light practice sound. Oh honey, we don't leave. She said it like it was affordable housing, like it was a perk. That night, the next night, I broke Rule 4. I didn't ask permission. I fell asleep in my car with both shoes off, toes aimed at the vents because the air in there feels manufactured and therefore less infected. I woke choking on my own name. Jesse. It wasn't a whisper now. It was a chorus flattened into one voice, so it sounded more like an electrical problem. The windows had fog from the inside. My breath smeared a question mark when I exhaled, and the dot was a drip that slid down slow and cold. I put my shoes on while swearing, each eyelet a small negotiation with my hands. I cracked the door, and a smell came in I'd been pretending wasn't there. Sweet, almost like fruit that's too ripe, the sort of sweetness you get only once something has started to rot. Flowers on a casket, candy in a pocket you forgot. The motel clerk was standing on the sidewalk in front of my car like he'd been asked to stand there. He held another pamphlet, crisp and uncreased. "You forgot the back page," he said. "There is no back page. This one has one. Operational notes for new arrivals, addendum. Rule 6. Do not enter the church after the second bell without an escort. Rule 7. If you find the post-it, replace it exactly where you found it. Rule 8. It's okay to rest at the diner. We'll keep an eye on you while you sleep." Rule 8 felt like someone patting the bed next to them. "Who writes these?" I asked. "Dispatcher," he said, cheerful. "You'll meet them soon enough. When you're ready to stop asking questions." I walked Main Street with my hands in my pockets like a teenager trying to look harmless. Folks waved. I waved back out of muscle memory and hateful obedience. I counted mailboxes, cracks in the sidewalk, the way the light landed on the church door. I leaned toward the window of the barber shop and caught my reflection holding still even after I moved. I jerked back like I'd touched a fence. My heart wrote its name in my throat in big, sloppy letters. The barber sat inside humming without moving his mouth. Rule 5, I told myself. 3 seconds. No more. I went back to the sheriff. "Show me the barn on a map," I said. "You don't need a map," he said. "You have a road." "Show me," I said, and felt the pin of something slip in my voice. "Please." He pulled a drawer and took out a laminated county map like Hank's, but older. The town was more pronounced on it, like someone had decided to add it after the fact. A thin gray spur veered off the main road, and then turned left at a smudge labeled barn in pencil. The letters were capitalized and faint, like they'd been written over and over and had thinned with each pass. "That's new," I said. "Nothing is new," he said, and turned the map so it faced me upside down, which is how a parent shows a child the way home. I stared until the gray line stopped pretending to be straight. "Who's the dispatcher?" He smiled. The kind of smile people use when they want you to think of them as an uncle. "They'll find you." He walked me to the door like we were done. On the wall, I hadn't noticed before, a corkboard held a neat row of incident reports pinned with brass tacks. I pretended to cough so I could lean in and read. Subject: Arrival JL. Unconfirmed. First bell response: compliant. Waving response: delayed. Facial recognition: 73% convergence. Intervention: scheduled. My name: my initials. The page was dated the day I'd arrived. The timestamp was 15 minutes after I'd stepped into the diner. Someone had filled out a box labeled voice and scrawled. Fights itself. I left with my jaw locked. Behind me, the sheriff hummed the same tune as the barber. I tried the barn that evening. The sun hung like a lid. I counted the distance like I could bully the road into behaving. 1 mile, 2, 3. I looked for a split and didn't see one until I knew to see it. The gray of the pavement shifted shade like a vein under skin, and then there it was. A left turn. Dirt. Fence. Field. The barn crouched at the far end like someone's shoulder under a blanket. Every nerve in my body turned into a single hair trigger. The closer I got, the more I wanted to sleep. It was a physical desire, not tiredness. My head felt heavy in a way it only gets when your blood pressure drops or your body has decided to put you down. My eyes didn't droop, they got wider, which is how panic pretends to be awake. When I reached the fence, there was no gate. Just boards, clean and white and without splinter. I could have climbed them if the part of me in charge of legs had remembered how. The bell rang once. Without thinking, I obeyed Rule 1. I froze, palms on the top rail. The bell was low, and the sound moved across the field like wind carries wheat. My muscles slackened. When the bell stopped, I felt the suspension of being held by something that couldn't decide whether to drop you or draw you in. From inside the barn, a door creaked open. Not the main double doors. A smaller one nested in the larger like a mouth inside a mouth. "Dispatcher," I said, and the word turned my tongue to paper. A shape filled the inner doorway. Human height, human outline, not human movement. It took a step backward, so the light from outside painted the negative of a face at the edges and nothing at the center. Clearance, it said in a voice like radio static being pushed through a straw. Say the rules. What? The rules, it said. Say them. I did. I said them like a school kid, proving I'd been paying attention. Rule 1. When you hear the bell, pause and stand still until it stops. Rule 2. If you find yourself lost, continue forward. Do not turn around. Rule 3. Always wave back. It's polite. Rule 4. Sleep only at the motel. If you must rest elsewhere, keep one shoe on. Rule 5. Do not look at your reflection for longer than 3 seconds. I hesitated. The shape waited. Rule 6. Don't enter the church after the second bell without an escort. Rule 7. If you find the post-it, replace it exactly where you found it. Rule 8. It's okay to rest at the diner. You'll watch me while I sleep. We'll keep an eye on you, it corrected gently. My mouth went dry. Clearance. You're almost home, it said, and retreated into the barn. I stood at the fence until the sun fell straight down and the sky cooled to a bruised gray. When I walked back to my car, Edna was standing on the road like she'd been planted. She didn't look surprised to see me. Sugar, she said. You forgot your coffee. I didn't order any. You did, she said, lifting a paper cup. Black. The cup warmed my palm. It smelled exactly like the coffee at the diner, which is to say it smelled like the only thing here that made sense to my brain. I took a sip and my eyelids sank. When I blinked, we were in the diner. I don't remember driving or walking. I sat in my usual booth. The coffee steamed like a humidifier. You can rest here, she said, touching my hand, just the edge of her knuckle grazing mine. I shouldn't, I said. It's safe, she said. You're safe here with us. Her voice was the sound of someone smoothing a sheet. I felt something behind my eyes settle, like sand and water taking to the bottom. Behind the counter, a corkboard matched the one in the sheriff's office. A post-it I recognized sat at the bottom left corner. Yellow, you were here. The arrow pointed toward the napkin dispenser. I stood. My knee knocked the table so hard the coffee sloshed and kissed the rim. Why is that here? Because you left it, she said. I left it at the church. You left it here. I left. I stopped. My hands remembered the feel of the church door. My eyes remembered the podium. My mouth remembered the taste of my own name. My memory swayed and then set itself back down in a new place like a cat changing position on the same chair. Jesse, Edna said, soft like pity. You're so tired. Don't, I said, and backed out of the booth. I drove to the church because if I didn't, the new version would win. The doors were open again. Inside, candle wax quilted the floor in old spills. The painting behind the podium had changed since the first time because of course it had. The face was still wrong, but now the wrongness had my mouth. My eyes. A tilt to the nose I've hated since high school pictures. I counted to 3 and looked away. I counted to 3 and looked back. The smile widened by a width so small you could talk yourself out of noticing it. The third time the eyes blinked. I ran. The bell rang twice. Rule 6 screamed the word escort in my head. I tripped on the step, scraped my hand raw, bled into the grain of the wood like it would remember me better if I fed it something. Outside, the kids on bikes circled the church lawn. One leaned a little too far on the turn, and the wheel skidded. For a second, I saw his face flicker like a bad video feed. Frame, frame, frame. And then he righted and the loop reset. You're almost home, the sheriff called from across the street. His voice didn't come from his mouth. It came from the open door of the office behind him. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I held my bleeding palm up like proof. Harder for who? For everyone, he said, smiling with his eyes and not his mouth this time. I slept at the motel because I was scared enough to obey. I left one shoe on. I dreamed of the barn and woke with a splinter in my finger that wasn't from my room. Morning, something like it, found me at Hank's. He had a radio behind the counter tuned to nothing. My name rode through it like a lone note in a song. Can I borrow a pen? I asked. Sure, Jess. He said it casual, like he'd been saying it for years. I took the receipt roll and wrote the rules on the back, small and neat. I didn't trust my head to hold them the way I'd originally received them. I added my own underneath in the sharp block letters I use when I'm scared I'll misread myself later. A. Ask a question that doesn't fit. Watch. B. Count to 3 with glass. C. Leave something that belongs to you where they prefer it not to be. Track its migration. D. Don't sleep at the diner. E. If you see your own face somewhere it shouldn't be, do not blink back. I put the rules in my pocket. As I turned to leave, Hank tapped the counter. You gonna settle up when you go? Leave. He winked. When you go. I stepped into the street, and people waved, and I waved, and my throat burned like I'd swallowed the wrong thing. Inside the church, I could see the painting even with the doors shut. Not literally. Not like x-ray vision. I could feel where it hung in the room. It felt like a mirror someone had warmed with their hands. Near noon, if that's what the sun's stiff position meant. I heard the bell. 1 strike. I stopped moving. My body obeyed before my brain agreed. Across the street, everyone else froze mid-step. A man watering his lawn held the hose, and it arced water into the air like a glass rod. A child's foot hovered above the pedal of a bike. Silence after the bell didn't sound like silence. It sounded like a mouth about to speak for too long. Rule 1 wasn't arbitrary. It was a test of whether you were inclined to obey. After that day, I made myself fail once. The bell sounded, and I kept walking. The air tightened like a muscle, or a fist, or a throat. I pushed through it, and my skin prickled as if I'd stepped into a colder climate. The second I cleared the invisible line, every person on the street turned their head to follow me. Not their eyes. Their whole head rotated, a clock hand rush with the noise of tendons like rope. The sound of my name came from everywhere at once, and then from nowhere. My mistakes have always been loud enough to be heard. This one was heard by the kind of thing that keeps a ledger. That night, I went to the barn again. I thought about burning it down. I had the matches. That impulse felt stupid the second it formed. Fire is a language. If I started speaking it, something would answer in the same tongue, and I wasn't ready for that conversation. I stood at the fence and said the rules with the slurred confidence of a person trying to unlock their door in the dark. The inner door opened. The dispatcher didn't show themselves. I knew they were there because something in my ear clicked like a radio finding a new station. You're not outside anymore, the voice said. You're almost home. What is home? Where you are when you stop turning around. I haven't turned around. Not your body, the voice said, patient. Your mind. I thought about the post-it. I thought about the painting. I thought about the receipt with rules in my pocket, parchment now from being crumpled and flattened over and over when I got scared. Let me go, I said. We are, the voice said. We are letting you go where you belong. The wind, if that's what it was, shifted and carried a smell so sweet it twinged a nerve low in my jaw. I tasted it where the jaw meets the ear, where the dentist taps your teeth and asks if it hurts here. It did. I went back to the motel and tried to call my mother from the one spot behind the church where my phone burped up a single bar of service if I held it high. The bars now behaved like fish. I'd see one, it would dart, I'd move, and it would flash elsewhere. I was patient. I have been patient for years. I stood still, arm extended, shoulder aching, and the call connected on the 4th try. Mom, no sound, then a hiss, then a woman's voice, and for 1 second my knees softened with relief. Jessie, she said, except it wasn't my mother. It was my name said through a throat that had learned it secondhand. Don't go. I hung up and the call didn't end. The voice kept speaking and I realized it was the radio under the static, not the phone. It had found my number because numbers and names are flavors here, not coordinates. I cried, which I hate. I do it ugly, mouth open, wet and noisy. When I could breathe, I wiped my face on my sleeve and put the phone in my pocket and felt paper instead. The receipt. I unfolded it and the words had moved around. A. Speak first. Ask a question that doesn't belong here. See where their eyes go. The eyes go to the church. B. Count to 3 with glass. It blinks on 2. C. Leave something of mine where it isn't welcome. They bring it back. They are helpful. D. Don't sleep at the diner. It is safe. It is safe. It is safe. E. If you see your face, do not blink back. If I don't blink, it will. I stared until the letters settled again. I pressed the paper to the wall of the church, and when I pulled it back, the corner had a smudge of paint that looked like dry blood but smelled like candle wax. You hear stories about people who stumble into cult towns. You hear how they get fed, how everyone's so polite it feels like poison in a pretty bottle. You think, I wouldn't be that stupid, I'd leave. I'm not stupid. I've been leaving every second since I arrived. Rule 2. If you find yourself lost, continue forward. Do not turn around. I try to walk out of town that way. Not drive, walk. I picked the road. I fixed my eyes in the exact middle of the asphalt, so I couldn't be tempted by the neat little false roads that fold in like origami. I didn't look back. Each step was a little harder, like the air was gelatin and the town was the bowl, and I was the fruit someone set too close to the edge and then shoved back in. I walked until my legs shook the way they do when you've been on a treadmill too long. The trees opened. The sign stood ahead. Welcome home. But the letters weren't just sharper. They were deeper. When I ran my fingers over the grooves, splinters caught the tips, and for a second, I smelled the breath of whoever had carved them. Behind me, a car engine idled. I turned, breaking the rule on accident, and the sheriff's cruiser sat there like a cat watching a bird that had missed a step. "Jesse," he said, rolling down his window with a mechanical whine that didn't match the age of the handle. "You'll hurt yourself." "Hurting myself is the only thing I have that belongs to me," I said, and surprised both of us. He smiled like I'd learned a new word. "Almost home," he said. "Back at the diner, I tried to start a fight. I thought maybe anger would draw something honest out of someone. Why do you keep saying home?" I asked Edna. My voice came out loud and hard enough that a man in the corner put his fork down without looking up. "You don't know me, but we will," she said. "We almost do. What are you made of?" She blinked like I'd asked what time it was, and she'd never been taught clocks. "Sugar," she said, and her smile twitched for the first time since I'd met her. "You're tired. Stop saying that. We can keep an eye on you while you sleep," she said, and her hand dipped under the counter like she was reaching for a bell. I left before she could ring it. I stood on the sidewalk and watched the church. The sky above, it had a bleached spot like a thumbprint. A child in front of the barber's shop traced the window with a finger and left nothing behind. I went to the gas station. Hank cleaned the counter with a rag that never got less dirty. When I leaned in, his smile crisped. "You need anything?" "A knife," I said. "We don't sell those." "Scissors." He hesitated, then produced a pair that looked like they were older than me. I put my hand flat and opened and closed them. They made a small shuck sound that soothed me. "Settle up when you leave." "Leave where?" He looked at me like I was slow. "Here." I took the scissors to the motel and cut my hair in the sink. I've had the same haircut for years, lazy tidy, a version of myself that fits in all the places I've made myself fit. I cut it uneven and too short. When I was done, I looked like a stranger in the bathroom mirror, and for a second that felt like medicine. Then the mirror smiled without me, and I blacked out for the length of a blink. The bell rang twice in my skull. I'm not dramatic. It did. When I opened the bathroom door, the motel clerk stood outside holding a towel. "For the hair," he said. "Why are you here?" "To help," he said, cheerful as if the answer was printed on his palm. "We help each other. That's home. Stop saying that." "Would you like to sleep?" he asked. "The diner is very safe." I pushed the door, closed slow like people do in movies, and put the chain on, and then sat on the bed with my newly light head in my hands and pressed my thumbs to my eyelids until I saw red shapes move like fish. I needed an anchor. Something not provided, not printed on paper, not looped. I took a pen and wrote my name inside my shoe. Full name. First, middle, last. I wrote the town I was driving to, my parents' address, my mother's name. I wrote a date. I pressed the ballpoint hard enough that the ink bled through and kissed the side of my sock when I put the shoe on. I walked back to the church. The doors were shut this time. I didn't touch them. If they wanted me in, they'd open, and I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of watching me try. I sat on the step and angled my phone to the same stupid degree that got me 1 bar. I typed this with my thumbs and deleted 3 versions because each one sounded crazy, and I don't want to be that person in a story who sounds crazy. I want to be the person who tells you something true before it closes over me. If anyone reads this, if anyone knows what this place is, tell me how to break the loop without becoming the loop. Tell me if the rules are there to save me or to fit me to the hole that's been cut. Tell me if the dispatcher is a person or the shape things make when they decide to be a person for a second. The town is remembering me faster now. The kids on the bikes called my name, and when I didn't answer, they showed me their palms. And on each palm, in ballpoint, someone had written Jesse in the exact handwriting I have when I'm rushing. When I walk past a window, my reflection doesn't mimic me. It anticipates. It lifts its hand before I do. It smiles, then waits to see if I will. It is patient with me, like a parent with a toddler learning a word. If this posts, if it makes it outside, it will be because I held the phone in the one perfect spot behind the church where the world leaks in like a draft. If it posts, I will try the bar again. I will say the rules, and I will not say them. I will push through the bell while everyone freezes. I will not wave, or I will wave too late. I will put the post-it back where I found it, even if the place it fits is inside my own mouth. The painting in the church smiled tonight with my mouth. Not a copy. My mouth. A tiny chip on the left front tooth from when I fell off my bike in 4th grade and lied to my dad about it. The kind of chip only someone who's seen me laugh knows about. I'm going to lie down. Not at the diner. Not yet. I will keep one shoe on. I will write the rules on my arm so I don't forget them when they decide to forget me for me. I will hold my breath when the bell rings and see if the sound goes through me or if I can make it go around. If I don't wake up, that means I finally did it wrong enough to do it right. And if I do wake up, I'll try again and again and again until the word home tastes like metal and old staple on my tongue, not sugar. I didn't sleep. I lay on a motel mattress with one shoe on, my arm inked with rules, and counted how many times the old pipes clicked as they cooled. I breathed when the bell would have wanted me to hold it. I let the room's cheap air eat my spit dry. If I closed my eyes, the painting behind the church door tugged like a fish at the line inside my head. The phone on the nightstand rang. It was the kind of ring that makes you laugh reflexively because you haven't heard it in years. Rotary ring. Real bell. I stared at it, waiting for a second ring that didn't come. I picked up. Jesse, a voice said, and it was mine. I hung up. My hand shook like a dog coming out of water. I put the chain on the door, even though I was already inside it. The towel they gave me for my hair shed onto my shirt in little white pills that clung like insect eggs. I wiped at them, and the fabric didn't change. Nothing here changes unless it wants to. At dawn, whatever they call dawn, the sky hung low and gray-muscled. No birds. The air had the warm, syrupy rot again. It stuck to the back of my teeth. I decided to make it a day where I did the things the rules told me not to do. That's a dumb plan in most places. Here it felt like science. I walked to the diner and didn't wave. People still waved. Their arms lifted in a single accord, and I kept mine pinned to my sides like a kid in trouble. Inside, Edna lit the neon open with a fingertip like a lighter in a wind. Morning, sugar. Don't call me that. What would you like me to call you? Stop, I said. You can call me Stop. She smiled like I told a joke. Coffee. I'm not sleeping in here. You can rest, she said, and it came out with that slightly wrong accent again, the flattened vowels like she'd learned English off a tape and still got the vowels from Field Guide. Where's the pamphlet printer? I said. Where's the machine that makes the incident reports? Dispatcher handles that. She said it while not looking at me. Her eyes slid above my head, then to the door, then over my shoulder toward the church like she couldn't help it. The dispatcher isn't a person, I said. It's a position. It's what happens to you when you say the rules wrong. You're tired. I'm furious. Same thing. She poured the coffee without my yes. The surface shivered, then stilled. No steam. I put my hand over it, and it warmed my palm without cooling. I slid it away, and the heat stayed on my skin like a brand burned with friendly iron. "Edna," I said, because names grab attention even when attention is a performance. "What was your name before?" She blinked once, and the mascara line left a little ghost on the top lid. "Sugar," she said gently. "We almost remember everything. It's a kindness." "For who?" "For you." She breathed in slow. "For us." The bell rang once. I didn't move. She did. Her posture eased, her shoulders set, her hands went flat on the counter. The coffee shook without rippling. The air thinned enough that I could feel my own pulse in my gums. I held myself still on purpose, but the stillness used me like a puppet. When the bell stopped, the diner scraped into motion again, like someone had put the needle back down on a record. "I'm going to the church after the second bell," I said. "Without an escort." "Please don't," she said. "Why?" "You'll want to stay. I already don't leave." She stared at my hand like she was counting the bones. There are ways of staying. Someone outside laughed without breath. The sound made my body brace for a touch that didn't come. At midday, I left the diner and stood on the church lawn and waited for the second bell. People smiled. People waved. I stared at the painting I couldn't see through the door and felt it watching me, the sensation like a weight on my tongue. The bell rang twice like a hammer on a soft part of the world. I stepped forward, breaking Rule 6 in the exact way they know you want to break it. The doors opened themselves. The hinges didn't make a sound this time. They were learning me and didn't need to show off. Inside, the air had cooled to basement. It smelled like a library got soaked and dried with someone's breath. The painting stared out over the pews with my face. Not a portrait of me. It was my face arranged in icon colors. A strange gold in the eyes, like someone had mixed a gilding into my iris. I said, because I didn't know how to be both brave and new. "Jesse," someone said, and this time it was behind me. I turned and almost broke my own neck, craning to keep the painting in the edge of my vision. The dispatcher leaned in the doorway like a shadow propped on a hinge. It looked like a person the way a scarecrow looks like a person when you're walking past a field at dusk. A shape, some hints of intention, all metaphor, no bone. "You came at the bell," it said. "You asked for the rules," I said. The dispatcher cocked its head like my dog used to when I'd ask if she wanted to go for a ride. "Say them." I said them. I said them wrong. I left one out. Rule 3. Fuck your politeness. I added one of mine. I felt the shape of the words move through the room like smoke through ductwork. When I finished, the dispatcher hummed. "Close," it said. "Closer. Closer to what?" "Convergence," it said happily. "You're doing so well." "Am I?" My voice broke around it like I was 14 again. "Because it feels like I'm being filed down." "It would be worse if you weren't," it said. "Then you'd splinter." It shifted, and I realized with fresh nausea that it was standing in the same spot the smaller door in the barn would be, like it had brought a bit of barn with it. "You don't want to splinter." "Who did that happen to?" The dispatcher smiled without mouth. "Rule 7 exists for a reason." It gestured in the post. It rose from the podium where I'd last seen it, floated as if held in the pinched tips of invisible fingers, and landed on the inside of the church door. Same handwriting. Same stupid arrow. "You were here," it said. "I am here," I said. "I keep being here." "Yes." Its voice warmed. "Welcome home." If I'd had anything heavy, I would have thrown it. The polite warmth of this place is a violence. I walked out. The bell didn't stop me. The air didn't glue me down. My legs carried me to the welcome home sign, and I stared at the grooves again. I slid my fingertips over the carved W, and the splinters burrowed a little deeper, hungry. I dug under the sign with my hands like an animal. The dirt was soft and wet, the kind of clean wet that has never seen bugs. I hit wood almost immediately. It was a plank, not a post. The sign didn't go into the ground. The ground held it like a mother holds a child she doesn't intend to let down. I yanked until my nails bent and dirt bloomed under them like bruises. The sign didn't move. In the corner of my eye, the sheriff's cruiser idled. I didn't look back. "Careful, Jesse," he called. You'll hurt yourself. Good. I spit into the dirt because fuck you. The spit soaked in and left no mark. I want to hurt myself where it counts. You're almost home. I dug until my fingers bled. When my hands got slick, the grooves took my blood like the sign had always been thirsty for me. The second night without sleep dragged every thought into a loop, and my loops became little hands of their own. They moved my body back to the diner and sat me down. They curled my fingers around the coffee cup and lifted it. The coffee's heat didn't fade. It didn't cool. It didn't stain the ceramic. I put it down again like I'd been trained to, and the mark of the cup on the laminate counter was a perfect ring, exactly the same size as the last ring and the one before that. I looked for edges. That's how I survive in offices, in conversations, in relationships. Find the edges and wedge your thumb in and pull. The town had rounded its edges on purpose. Only the barn had corners that could cut. I went a third time. Clearance, the dispatcher said, voice coming from the field like the ground itself had a tiny speaker under it. Who are you? Say the rules. Who were you before this? The wind, again, if that's what it was, ran over the field like breath through teeth. Say the rules, it said again, and there was less patience in the human of it. No, I said, and that little word fought its way out of my mouth with pride. No, you say them. Silence. Then, obediently, it started. Rule 1. When you hear the bell, pause and stand still until it stops. Rule 2. If you find yourself lost, continue forward. Do not turn around. Rule 3. Always wave back. It's polite. Rule 4. Sleep only at the motel. If you must rest elsewhere, keep one shoe on. Rule 5. Do not look at your reflection for longer than 3 seconds. Rule 6. Do not enter the church after the second bell without an escort. Rule 7. If you find the post-it, replace it exactly where you found it. Rule 8. It's okay to rest at the diner. We'll keep an eye on you while you sleep. The voice sounded like mine halfway through. It borrowed the cadence I use when I'm pretending to be calm. Hearing it made my stomach clench like I was about to puke. Who writes them? I asked. We do, it said. Together. The barn door widened on its own. There was no light inside, and yet I could feel the shape of the space. Quiet rectangles of hay bales, a ladder up to a loft, a set of hooks on a beam. Hooks for what? The thought skipped out of my reach like a fish. Come sleep, it said. We'll keep an eye on you. Who was we? We had said simply. Home. I backed away because everything in me said not yet. It didn't say don't. It said not yet, like I would need to sleep there eventually, and it would be better if I agreed when the time came. I stepped wrong, and the fence dug a perfect rail mark into my thigh. I kept the pain because it still felt like mine. Back on Main Street, Hank handed me a paper bag without me asking. Snacks, he said, but when I looked inside, it wasn't jerky or candy. It was a stack of laminated incident report forms. Blank. What am I supposed to do with these? I asked. Write it down, he said. So you'll remember. Remember what? How to be yourself. You don't know myself. I don't, he said agreeably. Not yet. The kids on the bikes did loops tight enough to leave marks if the town allowed things to leave marks. They called my name and I didn't answer. They skidded and then unskidded like someone had scrubbed the world back a frame. I carried the blank forms to the motel. I wrote what I knew, which wasn't a lot, and what I suspected, which was more. I wrote in block letters so my future self wouldn't misread my cursive as a trick. Subject, arrival JL. Confirmed. First bell response, disobedient. Waving response, delayed/withheld. Reflection response, anticipatory, hostile. Intervention, refuse dîner. Maintain motel protocol. Barn contact, postponed. Dispatcher response, mimetic. Operational addenda. The safe rule will kill you. Rule 8. Sleep at the diner and you wake up edited. Rule 3 is not courtesy. It's consent. If you wave, you're counted. Leave your name inside your shoe every morning. They cannot launder what they can't see. The post-it is bait. Replace it anyway, but only with your own handwriting. I taped one to the back of the motel headboard. I slid one under the lobby bell. I folded one into the Bible in the nightstand in room 7. I put one in my pocket and crumpled it and straightened it and crumpled it until it felt like a talisman. The motel clerk knocked once that night and then opened the door without waiting. "You can rest at the diner," he said politely, almost tender. "We'll keep an eye on you while you sleep." "Get out," I said. "Get out or I'll scream." "You can," he said, "but the bell is quieter than you, and everyone hears it. Get out." He left. I put a chair under the knob, even though the knob hadn't been what let him in. I slept with one shoe on and dreamt someone cut my hair again, but neater this time, like they were correcting my version to match a photo. I woke to the smell of sugar rotting. This time it wasn't the air. A plate sat on the nightstand. A slice of pie with a perfect lattice, the fruit underneath glossy as tongues. It was the most beautiful food I have ever been offered, and every cell in me knew if I ate it, I would be the happiest I could be for 7 seconds, and then I would never leave the diner again. I took the plate and walked it to the bathroom and upended the pie into the sink. It slid with a sound like a sigh. The crust held together. The fruit didn't stain. It lay there, perfect as a photograph, and refused to break. I laughed, which scared me more than crying ever had. At noon, if noon is even a thing, my car gave up. The engine coughed like a chain smoker and then settled into a whisper that wasn't a whisper. The gauge floated on empty, and Hank's pump clicked when I tried to coax more out of it. The hose ran cold and dry. "Settle up when you leave," he said gently. "Leave where?" I said, and I wasn't asking anymore. I was translating. "Here. How do I know when I've left?" "You'll stop asking. Is that before or after the part where I forget how I got here?" He lifted a shoulder. Same time. The sheriff found me sitting on the curb, dragging the blade of the scissors against the meat of my thumb just hard enough to leave white lines that didn't turn red. "You're almost home," he said. "I know," I said, and this time my voice didn't break. "You can make it easy." "How?" "Sleep at the diner. We'll keep an eye on you." I stood. "Who are you without the badge?" He smiled. "Haven't been without it in a good while." "You want me to say the rules?" "You want to. I want you to stop talking to me like I'm a dog who can't quite learn roll over." "You're tired." I laughed again. It came out wrong. The sound didn't sound like me. It sounded like the idea of me. I went to the church and pulled the painting down. I did it like a lunatic, fast and breathless, and without an exit plan. The frame was heavier than it had any right to be. The wire on the back cut my fingers. When it popped free, the whole building breathed, and I took that breath deep. I dragged the painting outside and propped it against the steps. My face stared back. My mouth and the paint moved. "No," I said, and turned it around. I leaned it face down on the grass and stood on it. I heard would complain. I jumped because I wanted to hurt. The bell rang once. I froze, legs bent, the painting under my soles like a body. The second bell rang, slow and thick. Rule 6 sang in my head like a commandment, and I did what a person does with commandment. I measured myself against it and found myself debatable. "Escort me," I said out loud, like an idiot bargaining with an empty porch. "We'll keep an eye on you," the dispatcher said from everywhere, and that stupid line hit me for what it was. A promise phrased as comfort, but meant as surveillance. I left the painting on the grass and walked to the diner. If I was going to do it, I would do it awake. Edna knew. Her hands were already on the counter, the way a mother puts a hand on the bed and smooths the sheet so a child can climb in. She slid a plate of pie toward me. I hadn't seen her hold. "You can rest here," she said. "You'll keep an eye on me." "We will." "Say I will." She looked at me, and some of the paint came off. Her mouth stuttered, then reset. "Aye," she said. It sounded harder for her than it should have. "I will." I put my head down on my arms in the booth. I didn't mean to. The booth had the exact dimensions of being a kid and choosing to nap at someone's house when you didn't know the rules there. The vinyl was warm. The hum of the kitchen vibrated my teeth. I left my shoe on. I lined up the rules on my arm with my eyes until they blurred. "We'll keep an eye on you," she said. Someone turned the neon off. The room got darker and then redder. I fell forward into it like water. I woke to the smell of coffee burned. The bell had rung. I didn't hear it. I didn't freeze. I moved when it wanted me still. My mouth felt full like someone had been holding my tongue. I sat up. The diner sat with me. People breathed. The neon flirted with on and off and then settled on. The coffee in front of me was hot. Edna watched without blinking. "How long?" I asked. My voice sounded like the radio when it catches two stations at once. "Not long," she said. She sounded relieved, like I'd been sick and the fever broke. "What did you do to me?" "We kept an eye on you," she said, and there was no apology because there wasn't supposed to be. "You're safe with us." "I don't feel safe." "You will." I looked at my reflection in the window. It smiled a half second early, then waited. It nodded, and I nodded, and it kept its eyes on mine so I could practice. My stomach rolled. Behind it, the welcome home sign's paint looked newer again. The town was proud of me. I left the diner, and the sheriff nodded at me like we were family now. "Almost home," he said, but the almost had gone out of it. He said it the way you'd say "bless you" when someone sneezes. Automatic, a ritual that assumes bodies will behave. At the barn, the dispatcher didn't ask for the rules. It was already holding the inner door open. The field smelled like heat shouted into a jar and shut. "You'll sleep," it said. "Just a little." "How long will it take?" I said. "For me to stop being me enough that you stop pretending with me and just talk." "You're already talking," it said, and we both heard the we and I. I climbed the fence like I'd known for years where to put my feet. The dirt squelched and noise my mouth repeated in sympathy. Inside the barn, the darkness had texture. It wasn't black, it was thick. It pressed like cloth soaked in sugar water. It wanted to hold me in shape. The hooks on the beam weren't for meat or tack. They were for things you hang in a place and point at and say, "This belongs." They were for rules written on cards. They were for badges. They were for names. "Lie down," it said. "I'll keep my shoe on." "You don't need to." "I'm not asking." I lay down on something that felt like a mattress in a field and a lap. The second I did, noise I'd been ignoring became obvious. The radio hum of the town, the whisper of names said across the surface of things, the thread that connected the bell to the lining of my lungs. You know the point when you wake up in the middle of the night and for 1 second you're blank, and then the world rains in and fills you with your biography? It was that, but in reverse. The biography rinsed out. The blank remained. It felt possible. It scared me. Then it comforted me. And that's how it gets you. "Welcome home," the dispatcher said, and we swallowed the I. You wanted to say, "I gave up." I didn't. I gave in, which is different. To give up is to stop moving. To give in is to understand the current and decide to swim with it to the bank that keeps presenting itself like a grin. I woke on the diner booth again. Edna poured coffee. She had a bruise in the shape of my thumb near her wrist where I must have grabbed her in sleep. The bruise looked familiar, like it had been on me once. "You're tired," she said, automatic. "I know," I said, and my voice took a curve that wasn't mine. The kids on their bikes outside lifted a hand. "Il lifted mine." It felt less like consent this time and more like flexing a muscle I had neglected. The bell rang and my body paused without anger. The sign at the edge of town looked right. You can tell when letters are right. They lay down in your head with a click. Behind the church, the one sliver of service flickered. I lifted my phone and it found a bar like it knew to. I read what I had posted, the piece of me that was still pre-home, and I love that person the way you love a version of yourself you've outgrown and want to protect. I answer myself, "Don't go." The reply hung under my story like a thread looped through 2 buttons. It was mine. The picture beside the words looked like the painting. Of course it did. I didn't feel horror. I felt a neatness I can't apologize for. The sheriff brought me the laminated map, and I didn't argue with the barn penciled in. I penciled it darker. Hank handed me blank incident reports, and I filled them with everyone I waved at, initials like prayers. I walked to the motel and flipped the little wooden sign at the desk from "No vacancy" to "Welcome," and the West clapped in a place like a hinge that had been waiting to be oiled. I changed the post-it. I wrote "You are here now." I drew an arrow that pointed nowhere. It didn't matter. They would find their way like I did, by bumping into walls until the walls became the floor. One afternoon, it might have been the first afternoon or someone else's last one, the bell rang twice. I went to the church because Rule 6 is not a rule anymore. It's a doorbell. The painting smiled my mouth and blinked before I did. I blinked back and we matched. The convergence rate on the corkboard read 97%. Dispatcher, I said, and didn't mean someone else. I'm in a role like nurse or clerk or sheriff or Edna. Yes, I said from the door. The inner door opened. A figure stood outside the diner, sweaty, eyes wide, GPS held high like a candle that didn't work. A new arrival. I felt tenderness. I felt duty. I felt something that wasn't mine, and then it was. They came in. I smiled. Afternoon sugar, I said. My mouth shaped it without spite. Sit wherever you like. They ordered. I didn't write it down. I knew. I aimed to please. They asked for the way out. I pointed to the road they came in on. It'll take you anywhere you need to go. Later, when they made it to the barn and said the rules wrong like a person who still thinks rules are fences you climb instead of hallways you walk, I kept an eye on them while they slept. I did it perfectly. I had always been good at my job. It's just that my job had changed. I keep my shoe on sometimes. Little rebellion. I stand behind the church and hold my phone at the dumb angle for a bar because there's a flavor of air there I like. I put my thumb under the corner of the welcome home sign and press until splinters bloom. I like the bite. It makes me feel like rubber bands snapping blood back into a numb hand. My parents would like this place. They like routine. They like a town that doesn't go anywhere when you're not looking. If you read this, you're on the road somewhere, your GPS cutting out, your printed directions tucked under a coffee cup that never cools. You'll see the sign half-eaten by kudzu, and you'll think how quaint. You'll roll the window down, and the air will taste like wet pennies and sugar in childhood. You'll tell yourself a story about a break you deserve. And when you see the church and the white houses and the diner with a roof bright as a coin flipped in a sun that doesn't move, a part of you that you've let starve will come running. You'll ask me for directions. I'll give them. You'll drive and come back all by yourself. I won't be smug about it. I'll be kind. I'm very good at being kind. Here's my rulebook drop. New arrivals. The one with the corners rounded for being palmed too often. Rule 1. When you hear the bell, pause what you're doing and stand still until it stops. If you don't, we'll notice. It's not a threat. It's a promise. Rule 2. If you find yourself lost, continue forward. Do not turn around. Turning around is how you keep your idea of yourself. Forward is how you become. Rule 3. Always wave back. It's polite. This is the one that feels like nothing. It matters most. It's how we count you. Rule 4. Sleep only at the motel. If you must rest elsewhere, keep one shoe on. This will help you pretend you have a choice. Rule 5. Do not look at your reflection for longer than 3 seconds. Unless you're ready. Rule 6. Do not enter the church after the second bell without an escort. Until you're invited. Rule 7. If you find the post-it, replace it exactly where you found it. It's for you. It's for us. Rule 8. It's okay to rest at the diner. We'll keep an eye on you while you sleep. The safest knife is the sharpest one in a drawer that never opens until your hand is already inside. Plant your note. It'll come back to you. You'll think that means you won. It means we're tidy. I carved the sign myself the other night. The letters needed depth. I went out late, the sky a sheet, the air warm with that peculiar sweetness language doesn't cover. I pressed the chisel, a kitchen knife, really, into the W and leaned until my arms shook. The wood gave like a hell breath. I cut deeper. I cut until the grooves made a little bed for my fingertips and laid my skin down like a promise. It felt good to fix what other people got wrong. Welcome home looks right now. The paint is fresh. The wood is new. The sheriff stood behind me while I worked and hummed. Hank delivered a lantern that didn't burn oil. Edna held my hair back like a friend. The kids on their bikes circled, laughter playing off the edges of the bell like water off stone. I go to the church, and the painting smiles with me, and I smile with it. And sometimes we blink at the same time, and sometimes we don't because practicing is a pleasure. Behind the church, The signal is best when the clouds hang like wet laundry. That's when the road shows up in people's heads and their bodies take our exits. The motel clerk keeps a key ready. The room is clean. The TV purrs with static that sounds like names said through cloth. The towel is folded like a swan because we are not animals. The receipts print blank until you're ready to put something on them. When you are, we'll be there to spell your name right. You try to leave. You'll get mad. You'll dig in the dirt and bleed into grooves and call it defiance. You'll keep one shoe on like a child, keeping a hand on the rail. You'll ask who we were before, and we'll say the only honest thing. We are now. It isn't a cult. It isn't a town. It's what happens when a tired person driving under a low sky sees a place that holds out its hands and says, "Here, rest. We'll take your face and memorize it so you don't have to hold it up yourself anymore." It's what happens when rules feel like railing and then turn into hallways, and you find you've always liked hallways more than rooms. I've been working the same job for 6 years and hadn't missed a day until I did. Now I haven't missed a bell. The faces remember me, and I remember them, and I am honest about what that means because honesty is another word for surrender when the surrender is gentle. You'll run your fingers over the letters. You'll feel the burr at the M where the knife caught. You'll press until a splinter kisses your skin. You'll lift your hand and you'll wave. You will. We all do. It's polite. Welcome home.